You're watching Politics Watch, part 2 of 2 of the PNP's annual conference, 2018 opening night, Thursday, September 13, 2018.
Comrade Sophia Fraser-Binns.
Comrade President of the party, Comrade Peter Phillips. Former President, Comrade Portia Simpson-Miller. Chairman for Life, Comrade Bobby Pickersgill. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, comrades all, good evening. Widely considered to be a rising star within the Democratic Party and a leading voice for his generation, Bakari Sellers has not only been featured on Time Magazine 2010 Under 40, but was named by Politico as 50 politicals to watch in 2012. In 2015, the Route 100 lists him as one of the nation's most influential African Americans. His accomplishments are extremely impressive. At only 22 years old, he defeated a 26-year incumbent to become the youngest member of the South Carolina State Legislature and the youngest African American ever elected in the nation. In 2008, he served on President Barack Obama's South Carolina Steering Committee, and in 2014, he was the Democratic nominee for Lieutenant Governor for the state of South Carolina. A graduate of Morehouse College and the University of South Carolina, Sellers practices law with the firm Strom Law Firm and is a political commentator on CNN. He is married to Dr. Ellen Rucker Sellers. A well-sought-after speaker, he honors the legacy of his father, a civil rights leader, Cleveland Sellers, through his tireless commitment to service. And being born on September 18, the day we celebrate the launch of the People's National Party. The day we celebrate the launch of the People's National Party, we cannot help but to feel a very special connection with our guest speaker. Comrades, ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct privilege to present to you our guest speaker, Ms.
I had a nightmare that I would be singing when the music cut off and you all could hear my voice. I want to say that the two most powerful words in the English language are the words thank you. And they're not nearly said enough. And so before I begin, I want to say thank you to a few people. I want to say thank you to my new best friend in Jamaica, Fitz Jackson. You know, I have a funny story, Fitz. I was speaking at a church not too long ago, and I felt as if it was one of my better speeches. And after you give speeches at churches, the pastor will walk you down to the front, and you get to shake hands. And so I was shaking hands, and one by one, people were coming up and shaking my hand. And this little girl, with all her sincerity, she said, "Your name is Bakari?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She had to be no more than 11 or 12. And she said, "Well, you were all right, but I was expecting Barack Obama." So I'm thankful that you all got the right one this evening. To Lisa Hanna, all the work that you do, I know how difficult it is to be in the minority party. I know how difficult it is to beat your head against the wall every single day. And as a black woman, I can only imagine that it's that much more difficult. To my new friends in the PNP Patriots and PNPYO, thank you so very much. To the president of this amazing, amazing party, Peter Phillips, thank you. I got a chance to spend some time with you last night. And let me just tell you an observation from across the water. The way that I judge the measure of a man is not his politics. The way I judge the measure of a man is not how he dresses per se, but the way I judge the measure of a man is by the children they raise. And I got a chance to see you and your son interact last night, and I can honestly say that one day I want to grow up and be a father like you. So thank you so very much for all that you do. To the former Prime Minister and President, thank you for being here as well. And to one of the largest personalities that I've met since I've been here, I think we call him the President for Life, Chairman for Life. Thank you so very much as well. You know, I want to begin tonight with an apology. I want to apologize if I seem a little distracted, and I want you to understand that it's not you. But I will admit that my mind this weekend has been wandering. It's been elsewhere. And no, it's not because President Trump took to Twitter again and made another outrageous claim that flies in the face of all empirical evidence. I mean, he did, but that's not enough to distract me anymore. My mind has wandered because for the better part of this week, many of my friends and family back in South Carolina have been trying to prepare for Hurricane Florence, which in addition to 110-mile-per-hour winds and life-threatening storm surges could drop up to 40 inches of rain when it comes ashore. And then it just sits over my home state for days. So needless to say, the shutters are latched, the windows have been boarded up with plywood, the evacuations have been made, and all the store shelves have been cleared of milk, bread, and canned goods. I didn't know this before I got here, but many of you all have lived through this before, just 30 years ago with Gilbert. So in fact, I want to take this opportunity to thank you again for inviting me to join you tonight, because if I wasn't here, I would be occupied there. And so from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And even more importantly, the fear that comes with the forecast of a hurricane, it pales in comparison to the terror that I've lived with all summer since my wife and I found out that we, yes, I said we, are pregnant with twins. So I usually tell you that I wouldn't talk about something like that in a speech. I usually wouldn't get that personal. And it's not just that I'm superstitious, though I am. And it's not just because I strongly believe that our private lives should be private, though I do. But still I feel compelled to mention it because for the past 2 years in America, and since the PNP has become the opposition party, we have witnessed an ongoing, unrelenting global war on progressivism, waged with the singular aim of consolidating wealth and power in the hands of very few, who then use that absolute power to further limit capital until we are beholden to those who hold the purse strings. So I am here this evening, we are here together because we know, as my good friend Jake Tapper reminded me earlier today, that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And even further, as our dear, dear president said, and understanding, as Dr. King said in his letter from a Birmingham jail over half a century ago, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. So woven together in that garment of destiny, we must share a sense of urgency and reject a phrase that has become all too common in newsrooms, living rooms all across America, and no doubt here in Jamaica. We get down and we get depressed and we say, nothing matters anymore. You see, that's what we say to ourselves when Donald Trump declares that his disaster response to Puerto Rico, where 3,000 people lost their lives, was the best ever. Nothing matters anymore. That's what we say when the President of the United States goes on national television and admits to obstruction of justice and pays absolutely no price for it, political or otherwise. In fact, the leaders of his party, once known as the party of Abraham Lincoln and Theodore Roosevelt and God bless John McCain, tie themselves in knots trying to excuse his behavior and disregard his words. We say, nothing matters anymore. It's what we say when children are gunned down, whether or not it's in neighborhoods surrounding Jarrett Lane, Brownstown, or in a high school in Florida. Our leaders do nothing about it. It's what we say when children are ripped from their mother's arms and locked away in cages. It's what we say when we try and try again and again, but nothing ever seems to change. And it shocks the conscience, but we say it anyway, nothing matters anymore. It starts off as a political analysis, a statement on radically evolving political rules in an increasingly digital and social media-driven age, or it's a coping mechanism for a world you just don't understand. But then, once the hope turns to frustration, and the frustration turns to fear, and the fear turns to anger and hate, and nothing truly matters anymore. Except I think about tonight, and I think about my twins, and I think about our future, and I'm here to say that it does still matter. It is still very real. I think about a family on the coast right now packing up their kids, the dog, and everything they can carry into the minivan, leaving behind their home and everything they know, and feeling the path of destruction blowing in from the Atlantic, and for them it does matter. I think about the first responders and the National Guardsmen and women whose job it is to go out into the storm because someone needs their help, and realize that it really does matter. I think about our shared sense of community, the interwoven strands of our history that connect us more than mere geography, and realize that it does matter. I think about the countless unnamed everyday heroes, the students and school teachers and small business owners and shift workers, everyone who finds a way to make it through another day, holding on to that belief that things might get a little easier, that tomorrow might be a little better. Everyone who counts those tiny daily victories and holds them close to their heart. And for them, it does matter. I think of that day in the not too far off future when I have two little perfect faces looking up at me because they know somehow that as long as I'm there, as long as they can wrap those perfect hands around my thumb, then they don't have to cry anymore because Daddy can make it better. I tell you, it matters. It matters more than most of us can imagine. That's not an American impulse or a Jamaican impulse. It's simply human. And it speaks to the very best of who we are. You see, the truth is, that's why we're all here tonight, isn't it? It's not just our moral struggle. The Democratic and People's National Party, as a minority voice in government, opposing parties, building a network and a plan to mobilize a people to push back against the rising tide of greed and corruption? Or is it something deeper? Is it something more fundamental than simply finding a path to an electoral victory? Because it doesn't matter if you're from Westmoreland, East Kingston, or Denmark, South Carolina, we share the same twin beliefs of possibility and responsibility, the bedrock principles of any democracy. Because when you join those two beliefs, the possibility of a better tomorrow and the responsibility we all hold for each other, the solution to the equation is freedom. Now listen to me closely if you listen to nothing else. I want you to understand that when I say freedom, I simply do not mean liberty. You see, liberty is simple. It's the absence of constraint in all its forms, the removal of chains. But mere liberty is a mean existence. For example, a hermit in the woods has liberty. A stray cat searching in trash cans for a meal has liberty. But freedom is advanced citizenship. Freedom is the interdependence of community, the mutual self-governance of a people where all voices are heard and all voices carry weight. A man, woman, child, or beast can have liberty. Only a people, only a nation can be free. And to that end, freedom has cost and requirement. We are not asked, but rather compelled to serve one another. And that compulsion makes a free people strong. Corruption is its only real weakness because corruption is corrosive to freedom, eating away at the bonds between us, breeding division and spite. So it follows, as it must, that any free people and any people's party must always stand against corruption. It's a philosophical and a practical cancer. How do you tell folks that you can afford to invest in public transportation or road improvements or even public safety because the government gave away another $600 million in sweetheart deals to politically connected contractors who put up 76% of that money to line their own pockets? What do you think happens when working families watch scandal after scandal at their state-owned oil refinery while their cost at the pumps jump by a third in only a few months? What happens when the money runs out? Do you think that people will pay that bill happily? Do you think they will chalk it up to nothing matters anymore? Of course not. So when the People's National Party speaks out against the rampaging and rampant corruption and cronyism outlined in the Contractors General's probe or on debushing contracts and exemplified in the seemingly endless scandals, it's not about politics or gamesmanship. It's because corruption drains public resources for private profit. And the public good suffers with rundown schools, flooding streets, and countless other symptoms of willful neglect. It's because it does matter. And when a child watches this drama play out again and again, year after year, with no change and no consequence, how can we possibly tell them that crime doesn't pay? You see, it certainly paid them. A $13 million retainer for entertainment and public relations, a $12 million annual salary for an HR manager, $96 million to build a wall that was originally built at $30 million. See, it certainly paid for them. That's better than the child's father makes driving a cab, better than his mother gets making beds and replacing tiles at the Sandoz Montego Bay. And we have to understand it's not just the kids in Port Royal and Spanish Town. Across America, 1 in every 3 black men can expect to go to prison at least once in their lives. In my home state, African Americans make up less than 1/3 of the total population, but more than 2/3 of the prison population. And we know, not guess, but know that across racial lines, poverty and a lack of opportunity are the driving factor. Imagine growing up in a gang territory where the kids don't play in the park because they might get shot. Imagine backbreaking generational poverty, the kind of environment that teaches you that you'll never be more than dirt poor, so you might as well give up now. Imagine living in the kind of world where prisons look like a step up. Think about this: in your average middle-income neighborhood, the ratio of age-appropriate books to children is 13 books for every 1 child, while in lower-income neighborhoods, the ratio is 1 book for every 300 children. Imagine that. Imagine growing up in a household without Dr. Seuss or Mother Goose or Huckleberry Finn or any of the other countless books that taught you to imagine a world beyond your own, that taught you to dream. Imagine those things being completely absent from your life. And it's not like you growing up not knowing a child that knows those books were absent from his life. Imagine what that does to them. Never mind the barriers it creates in learning how to read. Growing up in that environment, even if you can read, it teaches you not to. You learn that reading isn't important, that for you it's wrong. If you do read, you're somehow pretending you're better than your family, better than your friends, better than everyone around you. How do we change that? Because if we can change that, we can virtually end violent crime. We change it by investing on the front end, by building new state-of-the-art schools so that we don't have to build new prisons. We change it by training new teachers and paying teachers what they're really worth. We change it with youth sports programs and summer jobs, internships and apprenticeship programs, and a quality secondary education affordable for all and available to all. We change it by reaching out to the child before he or she becomes a criminal and making sure he or she knows that we're there for them, to help them, to nurture them, and to love them no matter what, because it matters. You see, when President Obama was here 3 years ago, it's really been that long, and oh, do we miss him. He announced nearly $70 million in U.S. investments in education, training, and employment programs throughout Latin America and the Caribbean to help young people in unemployed and impoverished and marginalized communities gain the skills they need to compete and succeed in the 21st century economy. He also launched the Young Leaders of the Americas initiative, a unique exchange that identifies the best and brightest young minds throughout the region and engages them in a new collaboration that opens new doors for them, providing a unique access to American leaders, technology, and capital, so that these remarkable young people can not only build and perfect their own ideas, learning from the failures and best practices of others, but share their own knowledge and creativity in a way that sparks new innovation across the board. You see, it's not just an opportunity for you to learn from us. The doors swing both ways, giving us new insight into how we can best overcome some of our most persistent challenges. I think about young men and women like Kiddis McCoy. You see, Kiddis was born and raised in Waltham Park, St. Andrew. Kiddis grew up around animals, and although she thought she would become a veterinarian, she instead found a passion for helping those who lacked the opportunities she enjoyed. So starting with a Facebook post in 2015 and a friend's WhatsApp group, she became the co-founder of Good Deeds Foundation Jamaica, which addresses the high level of youth unemployment in Jamaica by hosting empowerment sessions and career expos for young people. And just last year, as a fellow, Kiddis joined 9 other remarkable young leaders from across Latin America and the Caribbean for a 4-week program at Notre Dame, working alongside recognized leaders in business and nonprofit advocacy to accelerate their commercial and social ventures and develop specific action plans to carry out when they came home. You see, examples like Kiddis show us the incredible pool of talent that exists right here in Jamaica on every step of the socioeconomic ladder. Imagine what would happen if we would double down on programs like that, like the Young Leaders of America's initiative. Imagine a young man or woman who otherwise might have become a statistic instead developing new, more resilient infrastructure that help protect your community from others and helps protect mine as well. Imagine a new generation engaged within instead of praying for a way out. A new generation of young people that sees that you don't have to be a singer or a sprinter to be a hero. Imagine that kind of movement that creates a ripple effect that crosses the sea and comes back again. It doesn't just prevent crime by diverting young lives and engaging them in a positive pursuit. It creates an environment of hope where anything is possible. And in the end, it builds a base of homegrown capital, dollars committed to a far-reaching and permanent change that creates a Jamaica that truly works for us all. You see, I don't often quote scripture, and I didn't come here to give a sermon, but lately I found myself coming back time and time again to the promise in Micah where everyone will sit under their own vine and under their own fig tree, and no one will make them afraid. And no one will make us afraid. You see, I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of saying nothing matters anymore. I want to be free. You see, we need a new spirit of optimism, a spirit of change, and dare I even say a spirit of youth. Because in all great movements of the world, from civil rights to Alexander the Great, all throughout history, the one constant has always been the youth. And to our young men and young women in the audience, I say this: don't ever give up. I know it can seem hopeless. I know you can feel like the odds are stacked against you, that you can't possibly make a difference. I want you to know that you're wrong. You see, I grew up in the big city of Denmark, South Carolina, where we have 3 stoplights and a blinking light. And when I was 20 years old, I had just graduated from Morehouse College, and it was the summer before I started law school. I sat down with my parents and I told my parents that I was going to run for office. My mom said she would vote for me. My dad said he would think about it. And if that sounds a little audacious to you, you're not alone. You see, my opponent had been in office for 26 years. He was 82 years old. He'd been a legislator for longer than I had been born, and no one but my parents, really my mom, gave me a chance. But I walked down every street, I knocked on every door, shook every hand, and spoke at every meeting of more than 2 people. I worked and I worked and I worked and I won. It was a 386 vote difference that made me the youngest black elected official in America, so do not give up. Because in the final analysis, because tomorrow belongs to you. Not your parents or your teachers, not your bosses or your leaders or even me. Tomorrow belongs to you, and it's up to you to seize it. I believe you will, because I hold faith not just in you and not just in who we are, but who we can be. I believe that the light of our hope still burns within ourselves and within each other. And it takes a special kind of faith, because it requires you not just to believe in yourself, but believe in the rest of us as well. To believe that we as a people, as a nation, will not let inequality stand, that we will not let injustice and corruption prevail, that we will strive to be better than we are, to do better than we have, to have faith in one another and love our neighbors even if they don't love us. We have to look at a world that is broken and bleeding to see a mountain of obstacles seemingly insurmountable, but still stand, and despite the fear and pain, raise your hand and say, "Here am I, Lord, send me." You see, that's a special kind of faith. But I believe in you, and I believe in the People's National Party, and I believe in all the young people of Jamaica. Because that is the world that I want my children to be born into. And I will tell all of you all this from the bottom of my heart. That's a special kind of faith, and that is what it means to be free. Thank you, and God bless Jamaica, and God bless the United States of America.
I was born by the river.
And that was part 2 of 2 of our 2-part series of the PNP Annuals Conference 2018, opening night, Thursday, September 13, 2018.